In this example, I'm going to show how we could use data validation to help us build a staff database. That's the details of each of our employees. And so I've got this little table set up where we have in the first column name, then the grade the employee belongs to, the division within which they work, the date they're hired into the company, what their salary is, and then their percentage bonus entitlement. Now I'm just going to unhide these columns, and here I've got a few parameters which are going to help in the data validation. So we've got 3 different types of grade. We've got the bonus associated with them. We've got the divisions of the company which the employee could work in. We've got the incorporation date of the company, so the earliest date that the company existed at. And then we've got this, which would just be a setting of the maximum salary of any employee in this company. Okay, so we're going to start just by entering in an employee's name. So we'll have John Smith. And then for grade, we know it can be one of these 3 values. And so we're going to start off with some data validation. We're going to input a list. So we go to data, and then in data tools, we've got here data validation. And if I go to settings, this drop down are all the different types of data validation that we could put into this cell. And so for this example, I'm going to use list. And now in source, I need to select the different types of input or entry that we could enter into that cell. So that's the 3 grades over here. You can see it selected those cells. I press OK. And now I've got this drop down where I can pick any of these 3 types of grades. So I'll pick manager for John Smith. And then we can do the same with division. So I'm just going to go back to data validation and back to list, and then select the different types of division and press OK. And now we can pick that he's in, for instance, finance. Now for hire date, this can be any time between kind of today's date, and the earliest date should be the incorporation date. So I'm going to go to data, back to data validation, and this time I'm going to pick a date. Now here we've got the option of entering a start date and an end date, and in fact we've got a few different options based on whichever one of these we pick. For now we'll leave it the default, which is between. Now the start date, we're just going to select this cell, company incorporation, and then for end date we can actually put in the formula today. And if I press OK, now if I was to enter a date that this person was hired, let's say the 10th of May 2019, then that's fine. We've entered a date there. If I actually wanted to say put it in the incorporation date, so the person joined earlier, then this also would be fine. If I wanted to go a day earlier than this, if I change that to a 3, then now we get an error message. This value doesn't match the data validation restrictions defined by this cell. So I'll just go to retry. In fact, I'll go to undo. So we go to the original date that we had. And so that shows you how just by putting in that data validation, we couldn't make an error of putting in a date which was before the company was actually incorporated. Next, I'm going to put salary. So I'll go back to data validation. And this time I'm going to choose the setting whole number. So we're inputting a number which doesn't have any decimal places. This time I've got a similar option here, and I'm going to now put in less than or equal to, and this maximum will just select as the 500,000. If I press OK now, if I enter in his salary of, let's say 100,000, then that is fine. If I was to do 500,001, then this wouldn't be allowed. So if I was inputting this again as 100,000, I might actually put in accidentally 1 too many zeros. And so this would highlight the error and ask us to retry. And finally, for this bonus, we want to be able to input a percentage, but dependent on their grade, it can't exceed one of these. So we've picked the grade manager, and so we want to be able to put in any bonus percentage up to but not exceeding 25%. Now, so for this, we're going to use a formula within the data validation. So if I go to data, firstly, I want to pick decimal. So if I was to enter 10%, that would actually be equivalent to like 0.1, which is a decimal. Now we'll keep this as between. Now we'll set a minimum, and we'll set that as 0 because we can't have a negative bonus. For maximum, I'm actually going to use an index and match formula. And so if you're not familiar with index and match, it's a very, very useful combination of functions for looking up values. Check out my index and match videos. So I basically want to type in a formula here. We're going to put in index. And in the index, we select an array of cells that we're going to look up from. And then I'm going to put a match in. And then in the match, I'm going to look up manager in this lookup array. I need to put a 0, close both my brackets. If I press OK now, we've got some data validation in there. I could put in, let's say 10%, and that would be fine. I could put in 25%, that'd be fine. If I input 26%, we get an error. Now that is because the data validation has looked up this grade here, and then it's found the associated bonus or maximum bonus, and has set that as the data validation criteria. So if I was just to say change this to associate, then if I go back to here and put in 10%, that's fine. If I try to put 25% in, it's no longer allowed. Now another thing we can do with this data validation actually is if I go back to it, you can see we've got the settings we've just entered. We can also input an input message. And so here, for this input message, this will give us some advice when we actually kind of scroll over the cell, because it might not be immediately obvious what we can input into this cell. So if I put bonus input as the title, and then I can put a message to help the user understand what's going on. And I'll put input a bonus not exceeding the maximum allowed for the grade. If I press OK, so now if I select this cell, you can see this message comes up, bonus input bonus not exceeding the maximum allowed for the grade. And so that just gives some advice again to the user what to do with that cell. And I could put in a similar sort of message on any of these cells with data validation. Equally, if I did enter a amount which was not allowed, I currently get this error message. I can go back into the data validation and I can change that message. So I can put an error alert, and we can change the different symbols. So stop, warning, or information. If I put stop, I put bonus error. And then my error message can be the bonus amount input is too high given the grade. Okay, so again, if I go back to this and try and put 50% in, then we get the error message. And this helps the user understand kind of what they've done wrong, so they can retry and put something appropriate in.